Hi, I'm Tom, otherwise known as the Grungeon Master, and I'm here today to share with you my method to creating quick and easy NPC voices with almost no preparation. If you've ever been running a game and come to a point where your players have encountered an NPC that you haven't really developed, maybe they've walked into a random shop, they've decided they want some bread, and so have met the local baker. Now, of course, you've not had the time to stat out every single person in this settlement that they're supposed to be in for one session. Nevertheless, now your players want to RP with a baker. What is your response? Of course, not doing a voice in that situation is perfectly fine, but in the case that you are a DM who prides themselves on voice acting, roleplay, and making the world a rich and interesting place through your performance, then you might want to stick around for this video. Now, just a quick disclaimer. This video is not going to teach you how to develop and create a perfect voice for a character. But if your players run into someone who you've not yet fleshed out or given a voice, having a unique character voice is one way to get your players immediately invested in this place, this person, and your world. So, what is this super secret, super complicated method? Well, it's reasonably simple and can be done very quickly on the fly. What I like to do is write down 3 adjectives. That's all you need for a unique, compelling, and engaging characterization. So, how does this work? First, what we're gonna want to do is write down an attitude. Let's use the baker example from earlier. The attitude of this individual, I've decided, is laid back. You can have anything from high-strung to bored to furious. All of these present real, interesting, and unique characterizations for you to go along with. And they have the added bonus of informing how you begin role-playing them. If you have a general attitude in mind when you start playing a character, that attitude for sure can shift. But starting off with a strong feeling towards your players or towards this person's environment is a really, really important step to immediately getting into character. The second thing you want to do is jot down a tone. Now, this is a really rather broad category. It can be anywhere from nasal, high-pitched, gravelly, booming, timid. These are all tones of voice that you, I'm sure, have employed at some point in your life. We've all had a sore throat in our lives, which can make your voice really difficult to listen to, as if you've got stones in the back of your throat. That's a gravelly voice. We've all had our sinuses completely filled with mucus, which can make you a little bunged up nasally and sound like you're constantly needing to sneeze. And everyone, I mean everyone, can vary the pitch of their voice to some extent. In your natural speaking voice, you do not have a monotone. Even if you're convinced that your voice has no inflections to it whatsoever, it is monotonous, dull, and boring. That's not true. When we ask questions in English, don't our voices almost always tend to rise at the end? That is a higher pitch than your normal speaking voice. So use it. So far, we have an attitude and we have a tone. These are jotted down immediately on your piece of paper. You can mix and match, put whatever you'd like. Write stressed and shrill, for example. Or stressed and gravelly. Concerned and slow. These describe the essential characteristics of the voice that you definitely can do. But I said we would be using 3 adjectives, didn't I? Our third adjective is set to determine the uniqueness of our individual. It doesn't have to be incredibly special, but it serves to differentiate them from you with a sore throat, for example. Our third adjective is based on the previous 2. You look at what you've got written for attitude, you look at what you've got written for tone, and write down the first thing that comes to your head. If you were a writer and you were describing someone and you'd use those 2 words excessively, you can't use them anymore, what's the next thing you think of to describe them? Let me run you through some examples. If for our attitude we've selected laid back, and for our tone we've selected gravelly, a laid back and gravelly tone, it might be interesting if that person has a deeper voice. So the first thing that comes into our mind is deep voice. So we write that down. If the attitude you've selected is rushed or stressed, and the tone that we've matched that up with is nasal, then what logically follows from a combination of those 2 things? Potentially someone who's rude. Or someone who's extremely panicked. Both of those could follow very clearly from our 2 immediate prompts. Now here's where the magic happens. See, we've got our attitude, we've got our tone, and we've got our unique little stamp that we're giving this character. So let's work out how to voice them. So, our first example, an individual who is laid back. They'll talk slower and in a potentially less confrontational manner, giving you role-playing tips immediately out of the gate. If they have a gravelly voice, then you're going to have to go down into your throat and rumble around a little. And if that voice is deep, you try and shift your tone down as much as is reasonable, obviously without straining or hurting your voice. So, on the fly, someone who is laid back and gravelly with a deep voice would probably sound something like this. They wouldn't really care too much if someone gave them any problems, because they're chill. But you can tell that there's some authority and some gravel and grit in this person. This is completely different to my regular speaking voice. And as you can tell through that example, certain elements tend to make themselves more or less clear. For example, there was less gravel in my voice than I started out with, but a mouth shape developed that helped me merge all of these together and create a coherent character voice out of nothing. Well, not nothing, 3 small adjectives. Let's try again. Someone who is rushed or stressed, has a nasal voice, and is, let's say, rude. So if someone is rushed, they're going to talk faster and use fewer words. We go up into our nose for this voice, as opposed to the kind of gravelly throat or the neutral voice. Push that voice up into your nasal area and add that to the rushed, clipped, and not very verbose sounds of this individual. And then, our final special characteristic, they're rude. Great, that makes sense.
So they're speaking quite quickly in a nasal fashion, and they're going to be pretty abrasive. When asked a question, they're going to respond in single-word answers, and going to be very, very rude about it. This is the sort of person you certainly would not like to see in customer service. And again, is an entirely different voice from the one we were using earlier, simply by virtue of changing the 3 adjectives we're using.
This method is perfect. If you are making an NPC quickly, that doesn't need to appear again. But by virtue of having written down these adjectives, it also provides a crib sheet. If your players end up in the same town and want to talk to the same individual, you don't have to panic because you made up a voice on the spot. No, in actual fact, you have 3 adjectives that describe this person and how they talk. And because it's all about being intuitive to you, these are sounds that you know you can make and that you have made before. Additionally, if the voice is slightly different from last time, as long as it has some key identifying features, your players aren't going to notice. If we revisit our rushed, rude, and nasally individual,
I can speak pretty well in a rushed, rude, and nasally individual tone, but that might be slightly different to the one I was using earlier. Nevertheless, because the first things your players are going to notice about it are the things you've got written down, the key identifying adjectives, it doesn't really matter whether this is slightly higher in pitch, or slightly crueler as a tone, or slightly more painful to listen to.
It really doesn't matter. We identify sounds by the most present thing to our ears. My voice is actually a spectrum of different tones right at this very moment, being picked up by a microphone and processed both by the machine you're watching this on and your ears themselves. An interesting fact is that helium doesn't actually affect the pitch of your voice. It simply isolates and magnifies the higher frequencies in your voice.
So it is actually possible to mimic the effects of helium simply by removing the energy you're putting in your throat.
My key recommendations, though, is to feel where your voice lies, and to only write adjectives that you're actually comfortable portraying. This goes personally as well. You don't have to make the character's attitude sleazy if you don't feel comfortable portraying that. Additionally, if going lower and growling hurts your voice, there are plenty of other adjectives you can use. There are even random generators. The key thing is making sure that you're in control of your voice and, if needs be, are able to reproduce these sounds for 10, 15 minutes at a time. So, to review, my super simple method for creating an immediate NPC voice. Write down the attitude of this individual. Write down a tone of voice. It doesn't have to match. And using those two adjectives, think of something that would make this person unique, that might play into the attitude and tone that you've already written down, or might completely play against. The important thing is, you now have a note of exactly how that character talks, if it ever comes up in future. And if you find yourself losing the voice, you can build it up step by step one more time, using the 3-step method, which also has the added bonus of telling you the immediate attitude of this person, so you can jump straight into roleplay. If it takes you a sentence or two to find the other two, that's fine too. Your players will really appreciate the effort. Another small little tip is that you can make this kind of like a game. If you have a selection of adjectives off to the side, you can pick an attitude and a tone from your large list, and then pick another at random. It gamifies it for you as the DM, and gives you a little bit more spontaneity in the characters you can create, and you can make some really, really wild combinations. So, I hope the DMs out there take this advice and put it into their games, because it has helped me so much when players, as players always do, decide to do something you're not expecting. And as someone who loves to voice act and put voices in their games, I find this a really, really easy method to do so. Even if you're not too great at accents. You don't need a litany of accents to do a great job at making an interesting character voice for an NPC. All you need is some idea of that character's attitude, the tone of their voice, and just an extra little note to make them unique. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope this advice gets used in your games soon. If you enjoyed yourself or found this method really interesting, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel. All your likes and subscriptions and even comments are really, really helpful in helping us grow and maintain an audience on this platform. So we'd really appreciate you doing any one of those things to help us out. If you'd like to hear about how I create long-term voices for recurring characters, please do let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. I've been the Grungeon Master. See you in the next video.